you may want to rethink how you are going about drafting rookies in this year's fantasy draft for 2024. I went back and I looked at the 2022 data for rookies and the 2023 data for rookies, because it has seemed like in recent years that rookies have been more productive than ever on a consistent basis. And I wanted to know, you know, when is the best time to take these guys? Because a lot of people are taking shots on players like Marvin Harrison Jr. this year and Malik Neighbors in the early rounds, even taking some shots on younger running backs as well, like Jonathan Brooks, who we like taking Jonathan Brooks in like the 7th round. We think he's a good price. But let's start with 2022. I'm just going to give you the data straight. Okay. I basically separated these thresholds into like 2 different sections for each year. So you've got rounds 1 through 10, which are basically guys that on a week-to-week basis you're expecting to start when you draft them, because you're starting anywhere from 8 to 10 players on a weekly basis. If you're drafting a rookie that
flexible
high,
at worst.
they should be flexible at least. And then I've got the next, group of players that's after round 10. So basically dart throws, right? And I wanted to see what their advance rates were. I wanted to compare their advance rates. I got the average of those different groups, and I got the number of players in total of the guys that, would hit, basically, that had average advance rates, which is about 16%, according to the underdog data that I pulled. So rounds 1 through 10 for 2022, the first guy that was off the board, the first rookie that was off the board was Breece Hall. He had a 15.7% advance rate. Even though he went down in the middle of the season, he was so productive that he had just under an average advance rate. So he technically was a loser here, but I would, constitute that as sort of a neutral guy. And then you've got Dameon Pierce at 21.2%. Remember Dameon Pierce and how amazing he was that 1 year for Houston? Drake London, Chris Olave, Sky Moore, George Pickens, Treylon Burks, and James Cook were the top rookies going in rounds 1 through 10 in 2022. When you average all of those advance rates together for all of those rookies, we ended up with an average of 15.3% advance rate when you took rookies, or one of those rookies, in the first 10 rounds of your fantasy draft in 2022. For those of you who aren't familiar with underdog data and the advance rate data, 16% is that number, that threshold that you're looking for about an average advance rate. So under average or below average for these guys. Not too much, but you had some guys that hit, you had some guys that didn't. When you're looking at the actual number of players that were taken in the first 10 rounds, the number of rookies taken in the first 10 rounds, only 3 out of the 8 of them taken had an average or above average advance rate. 3 of 8.
Okay, interesting.
So let's go to after round 10. Because there are a significant number of guys that were big names, that are big names now, like Kenneth Walker and Garrett Wilson, that didn't go until after round 10 because of their situation. So you're seeing those top 2 guys, Walker with a 24% advance rate, Garrett Wilson a 25% advance rate. Guys like Jahan Dotson, who was in and out of games all year, still had a 16.9% advance rate, which is
nice.
Low-key nice.
Yep.
And then guys like Isaiah Pacheco, Brian Robinson, Christian Watson, obviously with his late season breakout as well, a historic stretch of multi-touchdown games. Tyler Algier, Romeo Dobbs, and then other guys who didn't work out like Isaiah Spiller. You remember all the hype there behind Austin Eckler in LA. TDP, who was supposed to be the backup for Christian McCaffrey, one of the 3rd round busts.
He's being drafted in like the 13th round.
Yes.
That's insane.
Yes.
Oh my
Jamison
gosh.
Williams, everyone expected him to come back from the ACL a little bit sooner, and it never really happened. So that was kind of, it was a guided dart throw. You hope that you would come back healthy. It just didn't work out. It's kind of a wash there. Alec Pierce actually had an average advance rate. Zamir White, Jalen Tolbert, and Jalen Warren. So when you look at the average advance rate for all the guys after round 10, all the rookies taken after round 10, you have an advance rate of 16.8%. So that's about 1.5% higher than the guys that were taken above or in the first 10 rounds.
I do want to interject real quick and talk about the draft guide that we just released. It looks like this. It's freaking amazing, and we've worked for about 2 months on this. Tons of people helping us out, lots of research going into this, but this is our official strategy guide. It's got our rankings, it's got positional strategy, it's got draft strategy overviews, it's got round by round analysis of every single player. It's going to be your friend when you draft, and we would love to give this to you. You can unlock this by going to flockfantasy.com/domain. The link is in the comments. It's also in the description. If you sign up for the Mother Flocker tier using code DOMAIN, you have to use code DOMAIN. If you do that, you'll unlock the draft guide and you'll be able to use it in all of its glory. You also unlock our fantasy football rankings, and you'll also unlock our new league projections tool that we've been working pretty hard on. And when I say we, I mean Ryan Bread, who did it for us, and he did a really good job on it, and it's really cool. More to come on that. So like I said, blockfantasy.com/domain, links down below. Have to use code DOMAIN to unlock, but let's get back to it.
So to put it in simple terms, 3 of the 8 rookies drafted in the first 10 rounds of 2022 actually worked out for you.
Correct.
And didn't hurt your team when you took them at price. That's 37.5%.
Yep.
The rookies that went after round 10 in 2022, 56% of them worked out. You essentially had a 50-50 chance that they were going to hit and really, really help your chances at winning a championship in your league if you took a shot on a rookie in that range.
Yep.
So it's the average percentages there, the average advance rates between the two thresholds there or the two groups there isn't too dramatic, but I wanted to see what it looked like in 2023 because I felt like I just had this feeling that there are more guys in 2023 that hit in later rounds than previously and that there was maybe even a step up. I wasn't wrong. When you look at the first guys taken, Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, JSN, Jordan Addison, Flowers, Quentin Johnson, Zach Charbonnet, everybody say oof at the same time. 1, 2, 3. Oof. That was big rough for us too. We like Zach Charbonnet.
That was bad.
Dalton Kincaid even. And then Marvin Mims, yikes him under. He was going in the top 10 rounds last year in 2023. 15% average advance rate for those guys if you took one of them in the top 10 rounds. 4 of the 9 were above average. After round 10, this is crazy. The average advance rate for guys taken after round 10 was 18.5%. You have a 3.5% difference between taking a rookie in the top 10 rounds versus taking a rookie afterwards.
Which is significant.
Which is very significant. And 8 of those 17 guys hitting. So again, just around a 50-50 chance that one of these guys are going to hit. So who were those guys that really worked out in the later rounds last year? Josh Downs,
right?
Puka Nacua,
obviously.
Tank Dell,
Yep.
Jaden Reed, Rashee Rice. Are you getting a correlation here? They're all wide receivers until Tyjae Spears and Devon Achane. And then you have Sam Laporta. And actually, Tyjae Spears doesn't even count because he was he was below average.
Right.
So all the guys that didn't work out were Tank Bigsby, Mingo, Roshan Johnson, Musgrave. You know the rookie class from last year and which guys didn't work out there in those later ranges. Jalen Hyatt was a big bummer for sure because we were hoping that he'd be productive and it just didn't work out because the Giants decided to crash and burn. But I found this data really interesting, specifically when you're comparing 2022 to 2023. You're like, okay, maybe 2023 was just an outlier year, right? Because the average advance rates for the guys going in beyond round 10 was significantly higher than 2022.
Sure.
Well, I would still say, I mean, when you're looking at these lists of the list of guys and the investment that you're putting in the assets that you're drafting in the top 10 rounds, the risk much outweighs the reward compared to if you have a guy that's, below average and doesn't really produce after round 10 and you're taking a shot on a rookie, like, are you really hurting that much?
I mean, here's
if you drafted them, not necessarily.
No. And here's what I should tell you. Like an average of 15% for rookies is honestly better than I expected. It's not gonna tank your team. And what's interesting enough here is I don't think in both years, in terms of the guys before round 10, there was not a single guy in single digits, which is really surprising to me in terms of, but again, part of that is because these guys, the price on these guys, the highest priced guy of the 2 years here was Bijan. Bijan was the closest to single digits. That's what gets you there. And it was at 10.3%. But it is really surprising to me that, it was as high as 15%. And again, it goes back to the mathematical correlation between all of these teams and how everything averages out to 16, which is true. But again, when you're talking about that being true, and then you're talking about a difference between 15 and 18, that's a huge difference mathematically. Like that represents a seismic shift in correlation. And yes, you're going to say in the comments, Puka was running this thing up. Tank Dell was running this thing up. Achane, Laporta was running this thing up.
I mean, yeah, that's already 5 guys we mentioned.
That's the point. Like those are guys that, I mean, hindsight is 2020. Last year when you were drafting, you didn't know those guys were going to do that. And so the point of this video is, let's say last year you drafted let's say after round 10, so in rounds 10 through 18, which are 9 rounds, you drafted 4 rookies, right? Your chance of hitting at that point, so 8 of 17, I mean, you have a almost 50% chance of one of those rookies being a league winner, because these were the only rookies in the ADP being drafted.
Right.
So like that's what's significant. I mean, and not maybe league winner, but let's look at all the percentages outside of Puka, outside of Tankdale. 17 for Josh Downs, 30 for Puka, 28 for Tankdale, 22.5 for Reed, 19 for Rice, 15.5 for Tajay, who was actually below average, 29 for Achan, 28 for Laporta.
So it's Michael Wilson, who was 17.9%.
It's not like these guys. Yeah, it's not like these guys are, sitting at 16.5, 17, and so they're barely doing anything for you. These rookies, because of their price, because of solely where they were drafted, because again, the later you're drafted and the more productive you are, the higher your playoff advance rate is going to go up, because the more significant impact you have on your team without having to spend an earlier draft pick to get that production, right? It's supplementing. You get this guy in the 17th round and all the guys you got in the first 10 rounds, right? And so again, last year, 17 rookies taken after round 10. 8 of them had... And I mean, I would even love to see the average, and I'll calculate this while you're talking, but I'm going to see the average of the playoff advance rate from the guys who were above average, because that's going to tell you just how significant it was. And again, people are going to say it's Puka, this is an outlet. No, I mean, we have 2 years of data as well.
Yeah. And I think one of the big things that people are going to say here is, well, of course they have higher advance rates because they went in the later rounds, but that is the entire point, right? You see proven veterans like your Tyreek Hill, for example. He's the easiest example I can come up with, who still had a super high advance rate last year, even though he was being drafted pretty much at his peak, and he still exceeded expectations, right? And you have guys like Bijan Robinson, who was going in the first round in 2023 as a rookie. He didn't screw you if you drafted him there, but he didn't have a super high ceiling either, because like a high advance rate ceiling given the situation. So for me, I'm like, why, if you want to take anything away from this, if you're taking rookies in the first 10 rounds of your fantasy draft, don't expect them to blow your socks off and to run you through the playoffs and to get you to the championship and help you win your league and be the sole reason that you won your league, and to be, again, the next Jamar Chase. The only reason Jamar Chase as a rookie was so effective and had such a high win rate is because of where he was being drafted, which was pretty dang low. People were very, very low on a guy like Jamar Chase as a rookie. Marvin Harrison Jr., as much as we like him as a talent and as much as we like his opportunity outlook in Arizona's offense this year, this is the reason I don't love taking Marvin Harrison Jr. in the first round or even the beginning of the second. I just don't think there's much upside taking him here with the historical data that we have. I would rather pass on Marvin Harrison Jr. and take a guy that I know is going to produce like an A.J. Brown in the same range, and just go take a shot on a rookie who could be a wide receiver 1 in his offense much, much later. And the same idea kind of stands for Ladd McConkey, Xavier Worthy, and Brian Thomas. All pretty much seems like going back to back right now in this year's fantasy draft. They're very similar to like JSN in 2023, Zay Flowers, and Jordan Addison all going in the same range. And what happened with those guys? What happened to JSN if you drafted him in fantasy last year? He didn't screw you. You didn't lose your league because of JSN, but he didn't really do anything. Like, he didn't do anything of substance to really help you get a leg up with your league mates, right? No. He just was kind of there, right? So I think investing in rookies in the first 10 rounds is like an okay floor move, because I mean, clearly the last 2 years, no guys in the single digits. I mean, there are some notable veterans that have been in the single digits because they've really, really disappointed.
The entire ideal of the later rounds is getting guys with high upside and ceiling, right? And so let's talk specifically about the players who hit in both the rounds 1 through 10 area and the rounds 10 through 18 area, right? So the players in the first 10 rounds that were drafted in 2023, there were 4 of them above average playoff win rate, right? Or playoff advance rate. So of the 4 players, the average playoff advance rate for those players was 18.67%. Okay, so that's 2.5% above average. So if you had a rookie that hit that you drafted in the first 10 rounds, they on average were about 2.5% bonus, right? Okay, so after round 10, you have, again, 8 guys there of the 17, and of those 8 guys, those guys, when you average out their playoff advance rate is 24%. So if you hit on if you had hit on a rookie in the later rounds, you're getting on average a 5.5% bump based compared to if you hit on a rookie in the first 10 rounds. So hitting on a rookie in the first 10 rounds is obviously good, but what it shows what it shows is that the returns are going to be limited because, again, it's all relative to the price at where you're drafting them. Whereas when you draft a lot of rookies later in drafts, there's obviously a much higher reward here, which, again, you would expect because they're being drafted later. But what's the takeaway here? If you're going to draft rookies,
they're already risky.
Rookies are already
risky in terms of what you expect them to do from a production perspective. So why not just take the risk in the later rounds?
In fact, I mean, I think if you were to do the math, I think you would see that rookies in particular, when you're talking about the top league winners pass, and I'll go ahead and actually look this up right now. I mean, I'm good with doing research on the fly. When you look at all the players past round 10 that had an above average playoff advance rate, or look, even just sort them by the highest playoff advance rates, I guarantee a lot of the top ones would be rookies. So let me go ahead and look at that real quick. Because again, my strategy this year, and looking like, okay, practically how do we implement this? My dart throws in these deep drafts like this are rookies, right?
Rounds 11 to 18, rookies.
I'm taking rookies. Like that's what I'm doing. So this is ADP picks 120 through 216. Look at the guys at the top. Raheem Mostert, Kyron Williams, Nico Collins. Okay, those are not rookies. Puka jumps in here. Devon Achane jumps in here. Tank Dell jumps in, and Sam Laporta right behind him, right? And so you'll notice that the number of veterans later in this draft far outweighs the rookies, right? I mean, you have listed here all the rookies that were being drafted, right?
Yeah.
So there were, after round 10, 17 of them, right?
Yeah.
And how many picks are between rounds 10 and 18?
A lot more than 17.
Quite a bit more than so even though the veterans outweigh the rookies are up here among the highest playoff advance rate.
They have a higher rate.
They're hitting at a much higher rate than veterans are. Like if you're looking for league winners, rookies hit at a higher rate than veterans. So what does this mean? It means I'm going to take shots on rookies in these drafts. Definitely. Jaden Reed's right here as well. And so, again, mathematically, some of this does make sense, but again, we're talking to where there's enough parity in these drafts and among the teams and things like that to where you can give yourself a little bit of an advantage when you're talking about statistically and talking about rookies. So
yeah, and I think when you're looking at this practically, like going into 2024, who are the guys in those ranges that we're taking comfortably over some of the veterans that are going in their range beyond, round 10? I'm looking at guys like Jalen Polk. I'm sorry, I'd rather have Jalen Polk than Gabe Davis, who's going in the same price range. Like Jalen Polk has the ability to be the lead wide receiver in his offense, even though we don't know, even though there's all those questions, which is why Jalen Polk is going well past the 10th round. This is the range that you want to take rookies over guys like Gabe Davis, who you just know what he's going to do. I'd rather take Marshawn Lloyd than Rico Dowdle. I just would. I'm sorry. I know that Rico Dowdle may be the guy, for the Dallas Cowboys this year. Maybe he's going to be the next DeMarco Murray. I'm not going to bet on it. I'd rather bet on Marshawn Lloyd as a rookie running back, being able to establish himself in Green Bay's offense as the new receiving threat, really replacing Aaron Jones. That's what they drafted him to do. I'd rather take a shot on Xavier Legette than Cole Kmet going back to back. What upside and what payoff are you getting from taking Cole Kmet as opposed to Xavier Legette? Like the list can go on and on and on. I could go all the way down to the freaking 200s and talk about Roman Wilson. I'd rather take a shot on Roman Wilson and Troy Franklin than Tyler Conklin.
It's not even close.
Is that unreasonable?
No.
And I don't think it is. And I think that's sort of the mindset that we need to have going into our fantasy drafts in 2024, because the data speaks for itself over the last 2 years. Rookies are producing at a higher rate than they ever have in past years in the NFL. And I think we need to adjust in fantasy football because you're missing out if you're not capitalizing on this opportunity. The reason these rookies are going so far down boards is because they are rookies and they are unproven. We are not denying that. But give these guys a chance who have never even been able to showcase what they could potentially do on the field versus guys who have been on the field and done nothing for 8 years.
And so having done multiple rookie strategy videos, here's how they all tie together. Rookies going in the top 10 rounds as a whole, Nathan and I are not very high on drafting them. Because and so when you're talking about a normal redraft fantasy league, we told you should only really have 1 to 2 rookies on your team. In a normal 12 to 14 round, 10 or 12 team redraft league, that's true. If you have a deep league, if you're doing best ball, if you're doing things like that, then the later rounds, that's when you take the rookies. Do not invest your higher draft capital picks in rookies in fantasy football. But if you have dart throws or if you have a deep league, then take as many shots on rookies as you can there. Because again, the return on investment is going to be much higher than those, and they're risky,
50,
but the
50.
risk absolutely plummets in a 13th round fantasy selection compared to a 5th round fantasy selection, right?
Yep.
The risk between Rome Odunze and Jalen Polk is not even comparable, not even remotely comparable. And yeah, odds are Jalen Polk's on a bad offense. He's probably not going to produce in year 1. He's playing with a rookie quarterback. But again, it's a 13th round pick. So I hope that makes sense. Let us know what you think, and let us know kind of what your rookie strategy is in the comments. Make sure you drop a like on this video. Make sure you subscribe. Like I said earlier, draft guide available now, flockfantasy.com/domain. Use code domain when you sign up, and you'll unlock the draft guide. And you have to choose Mother Flocker tier. You can do any tier you want. Or if you buy a team blueprint for your team, then we'll give you the draft guide for free. So appreciate you guys joining us. Thanks, and we'll see you later.